Well, I've had several requests. After I did the talk story about how did you end up in Hawaii, I've had requests from people asking about, well, what's the story about how did you build the house? Um, it's not exactly my usual topic here in the garden, but whatever. I worked as a carpenter right out of high school, mostly Finnish carpenter. Um, Later on, I did belong to the Carpenters Union for 17 years in the upper Midwest, mostly building wood windows and doors, but I built plenty of pole barns, too, when I lived in Wisconsin. And so I have a long history of driving nails, putting things together. I just think that way, you know. You grow up like that, and I don't see a big problem. Some people see this as a very daunting challenge, making a house. I really don't. It's just a process. You know. As far as building here in Hawaii, when we found the property, I was sure this was the place. This is what we were going to do. Of course, the next step is how do we develop the property? You know. Well, my initial first thought was, hey, I just going to build my own house again. And back in the time that I did that, the zoning and building laws here on Hawaii were very gentle. They were easy to get along with. They were not very strict. And it was easy for an owner to be his own builder. They had programs for it. Since, things have tightened up. And a lot of population moved in here, 40% increase in Puna since 2000. And the county has tightened up on this. It's pretty hard today for the owner to be their own builder, unless, of course, you want to go ahead and build without permits and proper paperwork. You do whatever you want to. But that has some real disadvantages, and I don't recommend it personally. Biggest problem with it is you can't get a loan. They won't loan you when you're building without a permit. You got to have permits, proper paperwork to get any money out of a bank. Also, if you decide to turn around and sell the property, nobody can get a loan. And so it's not the best idea if especially if you intend to move on in life, you know, which I have. Each place I live, I think I'm going to be buried there, but that never happens. I cannot even count how many places I have currently lived now. I keep moving through them. Maybe this is the last one, you know? Anyway, initially though, at the time I started the process, this was easy for me to do, was to be my own contractor. Well, I had some really close friends that were excellent carpenters. I am only an adequate carpenter. That's all I am, you know? I'm not really good at it. I get by. I've built chicken coops, greenhouses, garages, workshops, houses. I've even made my own guitars, but I do not consider myself to be a top-skilled carpenter. I know guys that are. There's a lot of difference. I had 3 friends. 2 who lived in northern Wisconsin and 1 that lived in Alaska. The gentleman in Alaska, he was totally skilled. He even had top security clearance with the U.S. government for building the secret rooms in the embassies that are not supposed to be there, you know. These guys are good. And so I talked to him. I said, hey guys, I got this place in Hawaii, you know. What do you think? You know, if I bring you over, you want to build a house in the winter when you're doing nothing over there? They were all pretty hot on it. Everybody said, yeah, you know, we'll do that thing. So I said, all right, this is cool. So first thing first, well, I had, 4 years of high school drafting, and of course in California I did landscape designs. I also did escapes for hard features, pergolas and whatnot, so using a drafting board, or in this case digital AutoCAD technology, to draw things was not a big deal for me. So I sat down and I started designing houses. And I went along for a while, seemed pretty good, but then my take on it was, maybe an architect can do a better job on this than I can. So I went ahead and I looked at some commercial designs available. I eventually did hire two different designers to go ahead and design me two different houses. I was still in the idea that my friends were going to come and we were going to work on these things. See? Well, I took the plans I had down to the local lumber yards here in Hilo, and I submitted them to them with the materials list that I'd created for the plans, and I asked them, what's this going to cost in materials? Well, it took them a while, but they came back with the quotes, and from two different sources on two different houses, and I kind of went, wow, kind of expensive. Was higher than I thought. Building here in Hawaii from recycled materials, you got a problem with laws because a very small percentage of reused materials can go into your building and have it permitted. All right, so there's one problem. But two, I'm telling you, if there's a loose board around here anywhere that's good for something, somebody's already nailed it up somewhere. This is not a place where you find abundant amounts of junk material. And so any old structure is usually full of bugs. And so it's just not worth it. Means virgin materials. Somehow or another you're going to build with virgin materials here. Number one, highly recommend it. You know, we did look at houses standing on land for sale when we were here. And I saw a few that were okay, but nothing was just right. I couldn't find it exactly where I wanted it, or the right kind of house with the right kind of property in the right neighborhood, you know. And it just turned out that this piece of bare land, cow pasture, was the spot, you know. It was the spot, and so it would require building from scratch. So after I got back the materials lists and the quotes, I started to think about this, and then I started to realize, you know, if I bring these guys over here, it's probably going to take us 3 to 6 months to get this project done. It's a reasonable estimate. And, well, that meant I'd have to figure out how to put them up here, so I'd have to rent a building, a house. It meant we'd have to get their tools here and back, or we'd have to buy them all here. Okay. It would require transportation, and more than just my car, probably. So we'd need at least a couple of vehicles to get people around. You know, simple is lease or rent some for a while, but again, we're looking at cost. And then I start realizing, my goodness, you know, these guys got to eat. They don't have a kitchen here. They have no infrastructure whatsoever. And so basically, anybody I brought to the island to do this work, I was pretty much going to be responsible for them, kind of like they were my family, you know, and these guys were. So I started to look at that expense. I went, man, that's starting to get up there, you know. Well, in the meantime, the county changed some things and made it rather difficult for me to be my own owner-contractor while I was thinking it over. And, well, times change. I started changing my mind a little bit as I started thinking this thing over. And so I started to go in the direction of what we call here package homes. It's a very popular and very common way to build in Hawaii. There are a number of different lumber yards over here that are either, like Hansador, for instance, connected to sawmill operations in the Pacific Northwest, where they cut trees from British Columbia down to Oregon, mill them, cure the wood, put it on barges, and ship the whole works over here. Or there are other companies like HPM. HPM is a local Hawaiian company. They buy their lumber from the mainland and ship it over. But it amounts to the same thing. Once it gets here on the island, the package home is that you'll have a website at HPM or brochures, and you look at it, and there's like 36 different styles of houses you can build. They will come with almost all the materials required except the cement. Okay, so they're pretty much incomplete. I believe on mine I added flooring, electrical fixtures, or light fixtures, flooring, light fixtures, and cement. That was what I had to come up with here. Everything else was part of the package. The nails, the screws, truss rafters, the drywall, you know, the whole works. They're very complete, these package homes. Now, they're not kit homes. This is a truck that pulls up in your front yard, drops off pallets of 2x6s, stacks of drywall, and so on. You got to cut everything. Okay, so it's not ready-made. The only part of the house that was pre-built was, in my house, we used trussed rafters. And so those came from the rafter factory here on the island. They put them together, they brought a crane, they set them down for me. All right. That was the only part, though, that was, you know, prefabbed. But the packages include doors, windows, you know, medicine cabinets, bathtubs, toilets. It's pretty much a complete house. So we started looking at them. We started off looking with HPM, and we looked at Hansador, and there was one other right now. I can't quite recall the name of them, but it's another lumberyard here that does package houses. Well, there are some distinct advantages to doing it this way. Number one, it's a lot cheaper. Oh man, it's about 50% of you buying it by the stick. Okay. To Hansador, for instance, who we did use, being a Pacific Northwest lumber mill, the wood they shipped me was awesome. We got some good sticks in this building. This wood's marvelous, all right? No crud wood. This is not that Home Depot junk full of knots and warps. We got prime stuff out of Washington State to build this house. That's the other. Another factor is these houses are designed by Hawaiian designers, people who live here in the islands and work. This makes a lot of difference, because most of the plans that I had drawn and the plans that I'd had somebody else draw for me, in the long run, looking at them, they all had shortcomings, because Hawaii is a very different place. It's not the same as living anywhere else I have ever been, and the sorts of things that you need and want here are not the same as what you want in Wisconsin. You know, they're not the same as what you want in California, and so on. And so designs that reflect my past really weren't that smart here. The designs in the package homes, as long as I could find one that appealed, were very conducive to local living. And just a very short list here. All right. For one, this house has huge eaves. Our eaves are over 3 feet long. It rains a lot here. It's raining right now. Okay, I am sitting under the eave outside recording this. My house is designed so if I come out the kitchen door and start walking around in a circle, I can walk all the way around this house 360 degrees and never get my head wet. Okay, I can walk from my house to my workshop shed over here and only cross a 12-inch area between the two roofs where the rain might hit my head. And so in a rainy environment like this, having structures where you can be outdoors, whether it's raining or not. I have a lot of my gardens in tubs right off the lanai, aka porch. You guys call this a porch. We call it a lanai here on the island. But houses that are well designed here usually have very large lanais wrapped around them. So the house is in the middle, big roof over the top. The walls in my house never even get wet from the rain in this environment. They are always dry because the lanai hangs well over the outside of the house. This is really important if you want the house to last a long time and not grow moss and algae and mushrooms and stuff. So I wouldn't have thought of that. I love skylights. You know, back in California and the Midwest, we had skylights. Skylights are a terrible idea here. Anything that leaks is bad. You don't want it, you know. We have, I think it's 1,000 square foot over here, 800 to 1,000 square foot, that is my carport, we call it. Well, in Hawaii, the carport's more than a carport. I do my barbecue right about where I'm sitting here under the edge from the carport, you know. I dry stuff on the carport floor, like coffee and cacao, you know. I've got my washing machines out here, and blah, 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 blah. These open areas, my carport has 2 open walls and 2 closed walls. And it's really a nice feature. having open air space in Hawaii that is partially enclosed and has a good roof over the top, it's sweet. I mean, you know, if you can get into a week of rain around here, and if it's all rain and you're trapped inside the house staring out the windows, it's not nearly as much fun as when you go outdoors and you can work because you have areas that have a roof over the top. You know, we use greenhouses or hoop houses here, not because they control weather per se or that it's temperature. We use them because they keep things dry. You know, a lot of coffee in this area is dried under greenhouses, hoop houses on concrete slabs. And so this is, you know, may not quite be in your mindset if you're thinking about building here. Well, the package homes will provide most of this for you because the designers that did these, they know all this stuff. They live here, you know. And so that's another reason I recommend them. Another reason I recommend the package home is because the plan is already pre-made. And when you take that plan down to the county and you set it on the counter, they look at it and they go, oh, well, it's a Hunsador house, or oh, it's an HPM house. Rubber stamp. I don't know what it is today, but for me, I set it on the counter, they hit it with a stamp, they charged me $250 for the building permit, I rolled the plan up and I was down the road getting ready to put the house up. That simple. I had a friend of mine who insisted his house had to be custom built and custom designed. And it was nice, and it did work out, but oh my God, they saw him coming at the Planning Commission. That guy had to jump through so many hoops. I mean, for instance, on my design, my electrical wiring in the house, the design showed shh, like this, that's an electric line, and then a little box and a couple little symbols at the end showing that's a switch, that's an outlet, this is a light. Okay, very rudimentary. Or, for instance, my septic here, this is a joke. We have to have a plan for sewage, all right? It used to be you could use cesspools, that is no longer legal. Now it's septic tanks. But they need a design that's not included in the house design. And when the house was being built, I needed a plot plan. I had to come up with the dimensions of the property, points of the compass, and such to say this is where the house is sitting, set back so far from this fence line and right there, you know, and all that. It's called a plot plan. Well, I drew a plot plan up for this. Very rudimentary, you know, basic footprint of the house, fence lines and what, no big deal. Anyhow, when we got down to having to do the cesspool, well, we needed another plan again. Well, we took the plot plan, I handed it to the engineer who does this. He drew one line coming out of the back of the house with a circle on the end of it. That was the cesspool with a dimension that shows how far away it was. He took a red engineering stamp, stamped it, signed it, dated it. We took it down to the county. I think they charged me another $100 or $200. They stamped it again, and that was the design for the cesspool. Okay, my buddy with the custom house, his engineering for his septic field over there cost him $1,500. They had the whole thing drawn out and so on. The wiring in his house, they had it right down to the gauge. They had exactly where it was going, how high off the ground. I mean, the details were incredible that he put himself through when he was doing this custom design with the building commission. Part of it was because he was claiming he was going to use it for commercial purposes, which was, again, another mistake. It was a real mistake, because that's why they ran him through the ringer. If you plan to be using your house for some commercial purposes, which many people here do, there's so much cottage industry, you do not have to design the house to commercial standards just because you're going to set up a glass making shop, or you're going to be a potter, you know, or in my case, This is a farm, according to the county and according to the U.S. government and according to me. Well, in Hawaii, they love farmers and they believe in farm as small, almost the Japanese model. You can have a half-acre farm here and it's considered a farm. And you get the advantages of being a farmer, which are huge. They really are. Okay, if you like growing stuff, be a farmer in Hawaii. It's very, very friendly. If you're a farmer in Hawaii, you not only don't need any special paperwork whatsoever, nothing, to sell products on the property that were produced on the property. Now, if you're canning tomatoes, well, that's a little different. There you need, what they call commercial kitchen. All right, that's different. But for, say, things like drying fruit, you don't need any special permits to dry fruit, okay? You don't drying coffee, mac nuts, any of this stuff that's typical here. We need no special permits whatsoever on the farm to either process them or to sell them off the property, okay? I don't need, if I put up a produce stand over here and fill it up full of, coconuts and papayas and mangoes, no special paperwork required. The county will ask me for the excise tax, and I have to declare income tax on it. So, there's some legalities. But I don't need a permit. I don't even need a business license because I'm a farmer. That's sweet. The other thing nice about it, too, is that once you do have one permitted structure, the house, that you've, gone through all the hoops and done it right, after that, a farmer can build as many additional structures on the property that are non-residential if they want to, up to 6,000 square feet without a permit. Dude, I mean, that's so sweet. There are very few places where you can still do that. You can still do that here if you're a farmer. And so I really do like Hawaii for this purpose. We're not strangled by our government, especially because they really want to see local agriculture, sustainable agriculture, and independence here. We ship so much from the mainland, So the package homes for us turned out to be the way to go. But then I'm still considering, what do I do about putting it up? Obviously, I'm not going to put it all up myself. Also, I started to get some experience, for instance, with before the home was ever put in, we ran water into the property. And most people here in Puna who are away from town or away from the main roads, most people have to catch water from the roof. Making a well is nearly impossible in Hawaii. Again, another story. Not going to go there. All right, but take my word for it. It's out of your price range. Again, another reason why everything you thought you knew about having property on the mainland doesn't apply here. For most of us who are not on the water mains, we have to use water catchment. We use the roof. Most roofs here are made from Teflon coated steel. We keep it clean. Water hits the roof, goes into the gutters, comes down through big pipes, and then it runs out to tanks, sort of like big doughboy swimming pools that have a membrane over the top that will keep insects and stuff like that out, but allow water to penetrate from the sky too. And then it goes back to the building through a series of filters and UV. They also use a little chlorine in these tanks too. So you got a whole system you've got to build. And in my case, it would have cost me about as much to build a system as it would have to hook up to the county main. This property was sited and purchased because it had that potential. I had to bring a line 2/10 of a mile from the main highway down this county road and then another 1/10 of a mile up the hill here to the house to get that to happen. And again, Hawaii is different. The weirdness, I don't have a water meter out here on the curb. My water meter is 3/10 of a mile away, right out on the main highway, on Highway 11, in a cluster with everybody else in the neighborhood. But in the process of trying to get that hooked up, I had to go talk to the water department. And I'm going to make this very short, but I spent 45 minutes at the desk with an engineer who kept insisting there was no way I could hook up. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Finally, when I got feeling I was just using the wrong words, he kept complaining that there wasn't enough 4-inch stub, 4-inch diameter pipe on the main for me to be able to get a meter hook that was all used up by the other neighbors. So it dawned on me, I said, well, hey guy, what happens if I put the stub on? And he goes, oh no, you can't do that. You have to be a licensed contractor. I said, I know that. I mean, if I hire a plumber to come in and put this stub on you're talking about. He goes, oh yeah. 45 minutes I'd been at the desk with this guy, turning red in the face, only to find out that he just needed the right word. They weren't going to do it. But if I did it, no sweat. Well, okay. And it did eventually. It cost me about $8,000. I went together with one of the other neighbors and we laid 2 sets at the same time and split the cost. But it cost me about half of that was the hookup with the water department, because they're real pricey, okay, to get the meter in and to get the hookup at the facility. Although I was told by a friend who works with Alameda County Water Department in Fremont, California, when I said, oh man, it cost me like, $4,000 to get the hookup. He goes, oh man, what a deal. I go, huh? He says, yeah, here in Fremont, that had costed $25,000. I went, okay. And so there's another $4,000 or so that I stuck in on having a contractor come in, dig up the whole roadside 2 feet down in the road ditch, and then run this Driscoll pipe in to get it to the house. Well, that experience taught me a lot about working on this island. If you're a local guy, and you know how to speak the language, and you know the ins and outs, and especially if you're a local contractor who they see all the time, life is easy. There's no problem, man, okay? But if you're off island, and you don't know how to speak the language, and go through the right hoops, you can get run through the ringer. They'll grind you up, I swear. I've seen it, okay? Especially if you think you're smarter than they are. That's what happened to my buddy with this expensive custom design. He kept thinking he was going to outsmart somebody, which it was his nature, and it was a mistake, because that being smarter cost him a lot more. Always plead stupidity, whether it's the IRS or whatever, any government agency. It's completely legal to be dumb as a cork. Yeah, and it gets you further, honest. So after that one, with the water department, I started to think, I'm running nursery over in California. I'm busy, and I'm already running a store for the partners. And do I really want to also be a contractor here in Hawaii to do this house? I start thinking about it and going, I never really liked being a boss, period. That really sounds like a lot of stress. Well, what happened to us is that before the house was built, there were all sorts of different ways that Ellen and I would come here and stay on the property and work here. I mean, I've done everything from camping in the national park on the desert side in the Kau Desert. It was a great place to camp, by the way, dry all the time. And it's really cheap, too, once they open the park back up. We rented rooms, we rented houses. We used hotels to some extent, but the truth is, this side of the island, ain't much for hotels anyway. I mean, we got them, but they're, Dolphin Bay Inn in Hilo is the only one that I've ever used, and I would definitely use it again, and I love the place. Great place, family owned, nice. Other than that, you're better off here renting vacation home or renting rooms. And so in the Hilo paper, Ellen found a guy named Leonard Mackay who had a room for rent in Hilo. It was very reasonable. And so we went ahead and we rented the room for a trip to come over here. And well, Leonard, he was a great guy. I really enjoyed him. And he had a very large lot in town with the old house on it that we were renting the room in. And, we got to use the kitchen and all this stuff too. But Leonard was building 2 brand new houses on that same property. He was planning to rent out rooms in the old one, rent another one to some locals, and then live in the third house. Well, he was very excited about these projects, and the houses were over 3/4 done when I saw them. and almost livable already. And so, you know, talking with Leonard, Leonard's all excited, want to show me his new houses. So we go out, we're touring his buildings and all, and they were really nice. And I enjoyed them. And so I asked him, you know, Leonard, this is really good work. I like the carpentry and all. And I said, you know, what did you have to pay to get this done? Well, he threw a price at me. And I went, oh my God. It was about, if I recall correctly at the time, it was about $75 or $70 per square foot for these buildings, and they were really nice. And in California at the same time, where I was living, it would cost you, you know, $250 to $350 per square foot to build these houses. Now, it's not quite apples and apples. It's apples and oranges, because Hawaiian houses are not built to the same standards that California houses are. We generally don't need air conditioning here. We usually don't need heating systems. We generally don't need insulation in the walls. You know, the roofs are usually cheaper because they're using trussed rafters with steel roofing that's made here on the island over it and so on. There's a lot of reasons why they don't cost as much. That and the requirements for zoning at the building commission are not as stringent as they are in California either. Anywho, the price was killer, and I said, who's doing this for you? Well, he threw me a name, and I'll be glad to pass it here in this video. The man's name was Jim Tarring. His company is Jet Builders in Hilo. Jim originally, I guess, had done almost all commercial buildings in this area, but had been moving into houses because there was a house building boom going on here at that time. I started to think about it, and I looked at the cost of bringing my friends over here, and I said, you know what, I got another plan. I think I'm going to talk to Jim. So I contacted Jim. We got a communication going, you know, and I started telling him what I wanted to do and where it was being done and blah, blah, blah. And so Ellen and I had pretty much settled on doing package houses, and so we told Jim that was the plan. He says, well, you know, get your packages together and then submit this to me, and I will come up with a cost. I said, all right. So it took Ellen and I a little while. We finally settled on two different potential packages. One was a two-story job, and our idea was that we could build this and lease the bottom to somebody full-time while we were living in California, and leave the upstairs for us when we came to visit work and so on the island. And that was a pretty good idea, I thought. And the design we had was one that could be just slight modifications, would close the top from the bottom so that we could have total privacy in two buildings in one. The other one that we looked at was a what they call a plantation style. That's a ranch home to the rest of you. We liked it too. It was really a beautiful house. This took a long time because I had to get Ellen on board too. She had to like the house, you know. And so we went ahead and we submitted the first one, which we considered the most desirable, the two-story. And when it came back from Jim, his bid to build the house, including the package and the concrete and the whole 9 yards, basically turnkey was the deal here. It was going to cost, if I recall at this moment, I believe he wanted about $180 a square foot to build this thing. Well, I came back not too far-fetched, fairly reasonable, but I'd already had to borrow half the money to get the property. And so this was really going to put this out at a pretty high monthly payment for me, because I was going to have to borrow the money to build the house. I didn't have it. So I decided to submit the second plan, which again was a single level plantation house. I have no idea how this happened. I really don't know. I'm not positive why Jim decided that this house that I'm living in was going to cost me $84 a square foot to put up. Oh man, I looked at the difference between the two and I said, well, I wanted this whole idea with the two-story and rent, but no, this is going to drop my monthly payments with the bank down so far that I can really afford them. And believe me, for many, many, many reasons now, I am so glad we did that. Okay, so glad. Because at the time I didn't know I was going to get laid off in 2008, and with the more expensive building, I don't know if I'd have stayed above water. By starting my own green garden service, I was able to stay above water with the bank on this place. Another thing that came to mind, and that is this was retirement property for me, you know, and retired people start getting old. Well, y'all know I've had a gout attack recently. This entire building is at ground level. The lot has been graded nice and level. It's easy to walk all the way around this house and all the way around the yard. Any places where I do have slopes, I put steps in so we can go down the stairway and so on. But I don't have to step any higher than 4 inches off the ground to get from one part of this building to another. Man, I'm telling you, if you blow your knee out like I have in the past, or if you get a gout attack, or if you just get old and feeble, there ain't nothing like living flat on the ground. Two-story living's good for the youth. Otherwise, if you're an old geezer, you might need to put in an elevator, you know. And so I am so happy we built the house the way we did. It's made my life so much more comfortable and easy. In the future, I hate to think it, but yeah, probably not going to get around as well as I do today. You know, most of the time I get around almost as well as I did when I was in my 30s yet. But, you know, that's going to end one of these days, and I will be really glad. They might even put my butt in a wheelchair. This house will be very easy to do that with. So, it turned out that this was the best plan. Of course, we have an awesome view of the ocean here, and I have to keep my shrubs trimmed to enjoy it, because if I had the two-story, we'd have been able to see probably 2 mountains and the ocean with no problem. As it is now, if I want to see that kind of stuff, I got to walk to the back of the property. And the reason we put the house right where we did instead of the back of the property was because at the time I did this, I wasn't sure about the money, and so I thought, well, I might have to sell the other parcel, because I do have 2 acres and they are zoned individually. I can divide them, and not everything is like that. You get a look, when you're buying land here, it will be zoned Ag 1, Ag 2, Ag 5, Ag 20. If it's an Ag 20, it's going to take you a lot of work with the county to break that down any smaller if you want to sell half of it. In my case, I have 2 Ag 1s that amount to 2 acres. And so my thought was that I might build this house and then later decide to build a second home on the other acre in the most prime building location I have for view, you know, and then maybe sell this one to finance that one. I don't know. I like to leave things open and possible, so we did it that way. As it turns out, I'll probably never do that. We don't need to. If I do anything up there, I'm going to build a meditation room with a studio for my guitar or something. Probably not another house. And so we decided that was how it was going. We were going to pay Jim $84 a square foot to put up this house. We were going to use a Hansador package home. There were some things about the Hansador home that I needed changed. I didn't like them as much. And it was very simple with the county just to write these little notes that said this is being changed to that, and that. Give it to them. I believe they put some small charge on it, rubber stamped it, stapled it to the plans, whatever. So we made modifications. We didn't have to take the house as it was. We increased the size of every window in the house by 30%, for instance. We also went ahead and added extra doors. I have a patio door in my bedroom that was not part of the original plan. It was supposed to be a window, but I have exit out of the bedroom in case I need to get out of there fast. I can also watch the stars at night from my bed, listen to the rain and so on, and it enters from my bedroom right into the nursery. I keep my eyes on stuff, watch out for that stinky little cardinals and wild chickens and stuff. So we made alterations, and they were okay and they were easy with the county to do that ahead of the game. people I know who get started and then decide to change something. That gets complicated. My neighbor Laura behind me has built a very nice cedar home back there, which was a kit home actually that they shipped from Washington, all made out of cedar. It's a beauty. But they wanted to change this, change that. They didn't do it ahead of the game. They got really bogged down in paperwork at the desk. Get your ducks in a row before you get started. That's easy. Jim, he wanted me here on the site when they got going, and it just wasn't feasible for me at the time. And so I went ahead, and that's when I drew the plot plan to show them where was it going and so on, you know. Oh, you're back. Hey, I didn't even notice. Sorry, I was over here picking away on the ukulele. Yeah, so we hired Jim, and he came in with a crew. I am extremely impressed with their work, with their punctuality. When they call themselves jet builders, they aren't kidding. These guys went to town. They started on this house in April of 2007. By July 2007, we were signing off the papers. It was turnkey. She's painted and everything, ready to go. So it's the quality of the construction work was really good. I had a little problem with some of the subcontractors. I didn't like his electrical subcontractor. He turned all my outlets upside down and did several things wrong, even though I drew him a complete map of where the fixtures went. They blew it all. I had to come in and on the electrical subcontractors, I had to say, no, tear it out, do it all over. And then on his subcontractors he used for doing the drywall, the goofballs went and washed off the mud buckets in my bathtub and plugged up my brand new drain pipe. And so they had to rod that out too. But as far as the work that Jim and his crew did directly, which was the concrete, the nails, the lumber, and all of that, it was fabulous. There's hardly a flaw in the house. I'm very, very happy with that work. Like I say, it cost me $84 a square foot, but I got way more out of it than I bargained for. Because when they came in here to do the work, there was no road in here, no driveway, see. And so for them to even access the property with any kind of equipment, they had to get the cat in first. And so they brought the cat in and they dozed the driveway, they dozed the house pad. The guy who did the cat work was a pro. The grading he did on the lot was absolutely perfect. And in this area, that matters a lot. We get so much rain at times. I mean, I actually saw in 6 days' time, we got 48 inches of rain here one time. Whew, man, I'm telling you, that comes rolling down this mountain. You know, it'll go right through your house if the grading's wrong, you know. And so he did a perfect job. All the water moves away from my building, goes on down the road towards the highway and hits the county ditch. Nothing comes anywhere near the house. That was just a perfect job. Anyway, the guy, it was so easy for him to do the work because we did not have lava. He was used to working on lava, and the prices had been quoted on lava. But he got here, and we got soft andesol soil, and it was piece of cake. He shoved it around like it was peanut butter and cake dough, you know. So he had nothing else to do. So he's hanging out, and he asked Jim, well, you know, you want me to, you know, build the driveway and stuff over here? He says, yeah, go ahead. So they went ahead, and at their expense, they hauled in a big heavy-duty steel culvert and a whole bunch of cinder and a little bit of good rock, too. And they went ahead and they built me a driveway, ditches, culvert, and the whole 9 yards. And I did not really pay anything extra to get that. It was something I was planning on having to do. And it was good enough that that was 2007. It was just this year, 2018, so we're 11 years from the building. I finally came in with more rock, resurfaced the driveway, and then built more driveways here coming around the house. But I got away for 11 years with the work they did, and the road was still okay, you know. It was getting down there, though. It was made mostly of red cinder. Red cinder doesn't last that long. It pulverizes. I used gray rock, which is hard this time. Also, then they had to bring in a backhoe operator, and the backhoe operator was here to dig the cesspool. Well, again, no lava, no rock. This is also how I found out that we have 16 feet of topsoil, because the dozer operator had to cut a grade that was 8 feet below grade in the back to build the house pad area. And so we already knew that we had soil 8 feet down from that dig. But then the guy came with the backhoe. He went another 8 feet to the bottom of the cesspool, and at the very bottom he started to come up with some unconsolidated pieces of lava rock. So at 16 feet we start to get some stones. I have almost none on the surface. But anyway, this guy, it was so easy and fast to dig this cesspool. He just yanked it out, and he's sitting around again, brought the machine in, says, "Jim, what do I do? You know, got anything else?" He says, "Yeah, sure, why don't you dig in Bill's water line?" So they went around all the way out to the road. He took the backhoe, and he dug a trench all the way up to the house, and I already had the Driscoll pipe sitting there hooked to my line, and so they just took it, they laid it, and they hooked it all up for me. So I got my water line done for free, basically. I got a culvert, I got a driveway out of the deal. There were a few other extra added items, but all in all, it was an extremely sweet deal. You know, we had to do some consideration with the house plan. For instance, the plan could be turned numerous different directions on the lot, and I know I see that most people, this is very common, they love to orient their houses to the road so that the garage or the carport is, you know, the primary feature. Well, you know, having grown up in the Midwest around Frank Lloyd Wright's buildings, where Frank did not orient houses to garages, okay? He had his own ideas about what was done. And when I looked at this, I said, "There's no way." I've never liked the idea that the primary feature in the front of your house is your garage door. You know, I mean, it says a lot about America. Beep, beep, yeah, beep, 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 beep. But, you know, I just don't think it says much. It's not a good message. And so I turned it so that the carport was pointing to the side, and we had to take a 90-degree turn in to park the car. It was very convenient for us, made for a nice big landing out there and so on, but it turned the carport away from the road, and in here that's a good thing, since we usually keep our washing machines and laundry tubs and stuff there, so you drive by my house, you don't see my washing machine staring at you. But in the process, what happened is the building inadvertently got turned so that we were catching the maximum amount of morning and southern light in this building. And our exposure here is to the edge of the curve of the earth. I mean, when we look out the front windows, we see the Pacific Ocean till it disappears over the side, you know, and that brings in, well, first, the first ray of light that comes up over the ocean every morning. Now, I'm a morning person. I'm always up as soon as the first bit of light comes into the sky. Been that way most of my life. And so for me, this was absolutely perfect. I'd get out of bed in the morning, the house would be all lit up, the warmth of the sun would start warming the house up nicely so it was comfortable to walk around in, you know, and I'd watch the sun come up out of the ocean every morning. It really did my heart good. Having the house oriented so that you're picking up not just, you know, the light, and so, but also for us, the prevailing wind is from the east-northeast. It's called the trade wind. It runs backwards of the winds that you get in the mainland. Mainland's prevailing wind is from the west to the east. Here it runs the opposite direction. There's nothing in between us and Mazatlan, Mexico. And so it's 2,500 miles of pure Pacific Ocean out there with just a couple of freighters and some whales. And so just down the slope here at the shore from our house is a point known as Kumakai. That's the lighthouse point. It was some years back that they used to monitor for clean air baseline, the EPA did, on top of Humphreys Peak near Flagstaff, Arizona. But some years back they detected too much pollution in that area on top of Humphreys Peak, couldn't use it for a baseline anymore. So they moved the U.S. baseline, EPA clean air standard, right over here to the lighthouse point. Well, that lighthouse point is visible from my front window looking down the mountain. And what that basically means to me is the cleanest air in the entire United States of America comes in on shore about 20 miles away and sweeps straight up the mountain with nothing in its way and comes directly into my windows. And so I get beautiful, beautiful clean air here. And that's always been a wonderful thing for me. I've really enjoyed that beautiful fresh air that we get. This is a very Hawaii can be a very clean environment. We get lots of rain. Everything is washed off all the time, you know. We're out in the middle of the ocean as far as you can get away from any other place, and so on. So it's like that. But then when the volcanoes fire up and we start to get that kind of crazy fog and sulfur dioxide and ash and so on, if you're in the path of it, Hawaii can have some of the absolute worst air you've ever seen. And nothing like volcanic gas, you know. Well, because of where we're positioned, despite the fact that there's been this constant ongoing eruption, only every once in a while does a little bit of that move in here and we'll smell a little sulfur or something or get a tiny amount of ash. But in general, this place is about as clean as any place on the island with the exception of the waterfall coast, the Hamakua coast, which almost never gets any of the fog at all because of where they're at. But generally, Puna can get it when the weather's wrong, but this particular location is so well swept by the winds off the ocean that it's usually very, very clean here. So it's all about location, 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 location. I speak with people frequently about buying here on the islands, and I have a few suggestions. For me, they're rules, but that's my business. For everybody else, they're just suggestions. One, don't ever buy anything here sight unseen. It would be one of the worst places I could think of that you could do that. You need to be here, looking, walking, digging, poking, you know, checking it out. I highly recommend that you don't just pop in for the weekend to look for a piece of real estate. If you're planning to buy property here, I highly suggest that you get yourself 2-3 weeks off work. Before you even start on it, maybe what you might like to do is what we did, and that was to get places all the way around the island. We rented rooms and campsites and you name it, around the entire island. And we stayed in every place for days, and then moved to another, and then another, and then another. And we sampled pretty much the entire island before we even really made a decision where we might decide to buy. For us, that was an extremely important thing. If I hadn't done that, I don't think I could have ended up as well off as we did with this. Also, elevation matters so much here. You know, if you're in the mainland, you're not used to the idea that within eyesight you'll be looking at 9 different climatic zones. Hawaii's like that. Our volcanoes, the 2 big ones here, Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, both just shy of 14,000 feet. The top has a permafrost condition. It's like, you know, it's like Alaska on top of those mountains. Then there's areas where we get large amounts of snow every winter. From my house, we can sit under coconut palms looking up, drinking a Mai Tai at snowpack. That's the way this environment is. And then there's everything from temperate latitudes all the way on down to the full tropics at the shore. And the shores tend to be rather warm. They also tend to be fairly humid. And so if you like warm, sticky, humid conditions, the shore is your thing. You know, if you get cold, you don't want to live up here where we're at. We're, you know, 1,600 feet up the side of the mountain. And in wintertime, it will drop as low as maybe 52 degrees in January at night. You know, generally speaking, our day-to-night temperatures here don't move much more than, I don't know, 10 or 15 degrees from day to night. There's not a lot of variation. We have too much water around us. But, you know, let's say at Mountain View at 1,600 foot, summer highs typically 85 degrees or so. That's very normal. I believe I've seen them as warm as 88 one time. But 85 is a typical warm summer high. The same nighttime temperature at this elevation might be 70 degrees or so, maybe the very upper 60s. So, you know, you get some variation from day to night. From winter to summer, then in the winter time, we get maybe 70, 75 for a high in the middle of the afternoon in January, and dropping down to mid 50s at night. You know, back and forth, little 20-degree circle every day. That's about it. Now, if that kind of weather appeals to you, to me, that's like permanent spring, and that's my ideal condition. I love it. It's perfect. Although it doesn't ever get hot up here, and so because of that, oftentimes where I think I maybe should just go swimming or something, I never think about it as much at this elevation because I'm almost never hot. Now, if you live towards the shore, you're going to want to swim all the time. So, because it's warm, you want to go in the ocean. So, you know, picking the spot, picking the town, some places the wind blows nonstop. Some places you got sunsets, other places you only got sunrise. Here we only have sunrise. I cannot see the setting sun. It's on the other side of Mauna Loa. It's 14,000 feet. I can see the glow in the sky, pink, you know, but I can't see the sun go down. You live in Kona, you watch only sunset, never see a sunrise. You live in Kahala, you get both. You also get the price for it, too. It's expensive up there. But, you know, most people seem to be attracted to Puna basically on price, and I understand that. It's one of the main reasons we're here, too. But, you know, cheap land is cheap land. That's simple. I paid double the usual price or more for the property I have here in Puna because this was location in Puna. Our spot is probably well over the 90th percentile as far as other real estate that's in this area. You know, we got the view, we got the air, we don't have the bugs, and so on and so forth. You know, we don't have the VOG. I don't have the volcanic hazards. I got deep soil, right? I got a county road, I got all utilities, blah, blah, blah. You know, I got the whole 9 yards. It's the package, and I paid for it. You get what you pay for. It's that simple. And most of that cheap land you see here in Puna is not land that I would want to live on, I'll tell you that. And most of the time when you get the cheap stuff, you end up putting so much money into the development on it that it's really hardly worthwhile. That's my opinion of it. I know some guys who have, there's a good friend of mine that worked with me in Green Garden Service in the Bay there. He's got a property here. It's got county road going down one side, and it's got a town road that's part asphalt going down another side. So he's got two decent frontages on this property. It is what we call a spaghetti lot. It's a long, narrow 3-acre piece. Okay, that's a little weird, but because he's got road frontage to it, that works. He does have access to some utilities out there on a county road up front of the place. And he's also across the street from the community center in Hawaiian Acres, who now has a farmer's market going on at the community center. So every weekend he can go out there and he can sell his stuff right off his driveway. He doesn't even have to set up in the farmer's market. They just walk across the street. You know, so it's commercially, it has a pretty good commercial exposure. You can make money living on that place, which is another factor. People want to live way back in the woods here and get away from it all. And tell you what, a lot of people just kind of starve back there. It's a good place to go broke. Each their own again. Me, I think exposure to where people can easily find you here is going to guarantee that you're going to keep lots of greenbacks rolling through your pockets more easily, and that's a good thing. Everybody knows where I am. I'm easy to get to, you know. I'm a visible character, and I got a sign out here on the road. One of these days, I might even put my face on it, you know. But yeah, he paid, I think, about $28,000 for that lot, 3 acres. It had some weird soil problems because it was lava mostly, but it had these pukas in the lava. Those are holes in the ground. And the pukas were filled with alluvium from the creek overflowing periodically during floods. And so you'd be going along in hard lava and all of a sudden you hit a puka and you go down into it. It made the machinery that he had to bring in a real problem. because the little machines could work with the soft stuff, but the big machines couldn't, and vice versa. So he's had to use a combination of different machines, and so far out of 3 acres, he's only managed to get one prepared. It's good. He's got the house pad on it, you know, he's ready to rock and roll with it. Got the driveway and fences in and all that. Again, when you're buying lava though, and we got pigs here, all right, you want full fences and good ones. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to grow anything. They'll tear it all out. Well, it costs you a lot more money to put fences in on hard lava than it does where there's soil. So they're all considerations, you know. But in the short, cheap land is cheap land. And most of the stuff you see that looks like, wow, what a steal, I wouldn't have it. I wouldn't have it. You only pay for the land one time. You put it up with what it gave you or the problems it creates, maybe the rest of your life. Yep, so there we have it. That's how the house came about. I hope you enjoyed the story. Aloha, and see you later.